Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I, Varun Mansali, welcome you in this session where we would be discussing the impact of abrogation of Article 370 and 35A in Jammu and Kashmir state. This is being broadcasted on our VR1 YouTube channel. This discussion has been organized by International Institute of J&K Studies and Analysis, that is ITSA, of which I am the co-convener. ITSA has been a pilot project started in Jammu with the aim to ensure that the correct version of voices of civil society are heard at national and international level. It is felt that since 1947 or even earlier, the happenings in Jammu and Kashmir state have been and are reported in a distorted manner, depending on the selfish motive of the individual or the organization or a political party concerned. So we are making an earnest effort to get the academic intelligence of Jammu and Kashmir state on one single platform and apprise the world about the true situation on ground and the real feelings of the masses in Jammu and Kashmir state. The general citizens and their voices are ignored by decision-making powers. Today, I have a galaxy of intellectuals from Jammu who would be analyzing the situation in Jammu Kashmir after de-operationalizing of Article 370 and 35A. We would discuss this evening that the de-operationalizing of Article 370 is a boom or a pain for the citizens of Jammu Kashmir who have been suffering from the dirge of your due to selfish motives of handful few and are condemned due to the misery. I now hand you over to Brigadier Dr. Vijay Sagar Dhiman, convener of International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis, ITSA, who will introduce you to the chief guests, the panel, and our distinguished guests. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure and a matter of great honor for me to be in the presence of this distinguished intellectual from Jammu and host of other special guests from India and abroad. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the idea of ITSA, that is International Institute of Jammu and Kashmir Studies and Analysis, was conceived by me after my retirement from the army. Well, post-retirement, while I was the Vice Chancellor of a university, I was also in touch with your think tanks in Delhi and abroad. And one such organization even offered me a fellowship. And I was too happy to accept that, but I explained to the management that my research on Jammu and Kashmir and the allied matters must take place within the precincts of Jammu and Kashmir state. So that I'm in close touch with the events as they happen and not as reported by some motivated, selfish segments, including that of media. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my efforts for 2 years did not bear fruits as it involved finances. And the managements were not ready for this kind of a venture to pay me some money to go and start my work in Jammu. And finally, one day on the advice of one of my counselors, our revered Mr. Narendra Shishodia, who will be joining us very soon, and he's also an ex-Director General of IDSA, that is Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. He advised me that I should not waste my time in this venture and must start something of my own. Well, I set out to configure a small research entity in Jammu, wherein today we are only 5 of us working on ground, and we have a patronage of about 35 intellectuals like you all who are keeping their hands on my head. So, most of the people are present over here also in this August gathering, who provided me with a lot of prudent advice, and I extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you. However, my work did not end here, and I guess God also wanted to test my resolve. Well, all preparations done by me had to be halted due to Corona outbreak. And now that the Corona restrictions have been partially eased out, so we decided at least we should go ahead with the webinars at least. We had plans to be offline, and same has been reflected in the approach paper which I have forwarded to all of you. And this is how the ITSA is shaping up bit by bit, but surely there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will now like to introduce you to our chief guest, Ambassador G. Parthasarathy, Well, I'm so grateful to you, sir, that you accepted my invitation, and I'm so happy and elated that you are on the panel with me here, sir.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador doesn't need any introduction. He's an international thinker, a prudent analyst, and whole world knows about him. And we all are aware of his tremendous experience in the areas of diplomacy, and especially in case of South Asia, wherein that he was, I think, so you had 3 tenures in Pakistan, if I'm not wrong, sir, including the one of an High Commissioner. And today also, government, whenever they want prudent advice on this area, this region, and I'm sure, I know that Ambassador Parthasarathy is always there. So thank you very much, sir, and warm welcome to the portals of ITSA.
Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, now we have a panel of speakers. First one in the line is Mr. K.V. Jandial. He is a career bureaucrat, having 40 years of experience in Jammu and Kashmir, all his life, and he knows the each nerve of how things work in Jammu. And today, we shall be honored to hear him for at least 10 to 15 minutes, which will be telling us what exactly is the situation after the operationalization of Article 370 and 35. Similarly, we have another intellectual from Jammu, who's Mr. Ashok Bhan, Dr. Ashok Bhan, I'm sorry, sir. He is the ex-Director General of Police, and again, he is a very, very expert, and he knows every bit of the security scenario in the Jammu and Kashmir. Then we have Lieutenant General P.S. Mehta, a retired army officer, who is again a son of soil, but then he's had tremendous amount of tenure in Jammu and Kashmir in the insurgency areas, and he carries a lot of experience, actual hands-on experience in fighting with the terrorists. And a word about him, which he'll be telling in detail about himself, but I will tell you, he is also one of the victims of this entire gamut. At the so-called genocide of Pandits we talk about, it was also few minority Sikhs in the valley, of which he is one. And I take pride in being his friend, because his father belongs to the regiment which I belong to, that is 4580 Regiment. And then we have Dr. Vrinder Gupta. He is an academician par excellence, and he's been into Jammu and Kashmir affairs for last more than 40 years. All his life he's been here, and he's been in the Jammu University, head of the department, and in various other capacities. He served the area very well. He's been in advisory role to the government many times, and there are forums like IIPA or Public Opinion Forum, such like local think tanks in Jammu, of which he is a very, very important constituent of. So these are the 4 speakers, and finally we request Ambassador Parthasarathy to give us his views about the whole thing. And now I will also introduce you to a few of our guests from abroad. We have Dr. Amjad Ayub Mishra, who will be joining us, Mirza, who's a human rights activist from Mirpur and TOJK, and now in exile in UK. He will soon be joining us. I think he also has some problems of connectivity problems, so he'll be joining in. And Mr. Varinder Sharma, who's an MP in UK, is already with us. A warm welcome to you, sir. Then I'm also expecting Ms. Lakshmi Kaul. She is an advisor of Bob Blackman, again an MP in UK, who's pro-India. And she also told me, just give me a phone, and she'll be liking very soon. Then we have Lalit Sharma, president of International Dogra Society. Manu Khajuria, she is also running a similar Dogra organization in UK. Then we have Simone from Switzerland, Vania from Portugal, Boyd from Canada, Tabindu from New York, Virti Kha from New Zealand, and of course, the final foreign guest of mine, my life, my friend, philosopher, guide, and everything for me is my daughter Kanika, who is the third.
So abrogation of Article 370 is a very significant and very important topic, and we need to understand the implications of it. And for that, we have all eminent personalities with us. So to start with, I would like to invite Mr. K.V. Jandial, sir. Sir, what are the implications according to you of abrogation of Article 370?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this prestigious panel. everybody knows that the 5th August 2019 was a historic day. On this day, last year, the Parliament overwhelmingly, with a majority, made a constitutional correction. The correction was that the Article 370, even though it was framed with the consent and the participation of Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah, has a very wrong implications. I personally feel that Article 370 as such was not as bad as it was made by the Kashmir leadership, because they projected it as that making Jammu and Kashmir as a separate nation, a separate political entity away from the Union of India. Because why I consider it not as bad, because if you read the Article 370 itself, it is the misnomer, misgiving given by the people at the helm of affairs was that it has nothing. We are linked with the accession of Jammu and Kashmir with India, and then even one of our chief minister at the floor of the assembly had said that our accession is conditional. So this Article 370 has nothing to do with the accession. The Article 370, we must tell the world, and we must tell even at the national level, it was nothing. But the accession of Jammu and Kashmir with India was a normal process under the India Independence Act 1947, led with Government of India Act 1935. The instrument accession was identical for all the 560 odd princely states, and even the schedule attached with the instrument accession, to which every Kashmiri politician keep hammering that accession is restricted to three subjects. It is totally a wrong notion, because these three subjects were given by the cabinet mission when they visited India before the declaring our independence, that princely state should go first for three subjects. The federal parliament will have where the powers in the union list will have only for three subjects. But 370 was not only that. That was only one part. The subsequent provisions of the 370 did say that with the consent or the concurrence of the government of Jammu and Kashmir, read it, mind it, it's the government of Jammu and Kashmir, not the legislature of Jammu and Kashmir. The government of Jammu and Kashmir, the rest of the provisions of the article, because the 370 only is so moto extended Article 1 and Article 370. So this second provision was said that with the concurrence of the state government, other provisions can also be extended to the constitution provision can be extended to Jammu and Kashmir with the concurrence of the state government, and a presidential order will be issued. And by using this power, most of the provisions have already been extended. But the only clause was that with suitable modification, and it was a modification, small modification can be made by extending the provisions of the Constitution of India. This issue nobody talks. And that third provision which the present government used was the abrogation or the changes in the whole of the Article 370. 370, it has the one problem, or that it has to be on the recommendation of the State Constitution Assembly, and that State Constitution Assembly had wound up in 1956 after adopting a state constitution. No, they have found a way and a constitution mechanism, and it was the same provision using the Article 370 itself. They have reframed the Article 370. Article 370 still exists, but in a different form. Now it says that all the provisions of the state national constitution, as amended from day to day, from time to time, extended to Jammu and Kashmir as had been extended to all other states and union territories of the country. What is the implication? That all the provision with all the benefit of the Constitution of India was extended to people of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So that is the first implication of the abrogation of what you call is a reframing of the Article 370. So while this indeed is a very bold step taken by the Parliament, and I think this is a red letter day for J&K. Now question is what we were expecting. Article 370 was there for almost for last 70 years, and if we are thinking that in 1 year we will expect everything to wash out, or all the best they have created in 70 years would be removed in 1 year, it will be too much to expect from anyone, any administrator. But the process has been started. Let me to tell you the truth that three regions are there: one Jammu, Ladakh, and Kashmir 3. In two regions, people were very happy. There was euphoria on the reframing of the article, as popularly say, abrogation of Article 370. Kashmir did not welcome the step as such, because they were fed with this idea that 370 is everything, and you can get azadi out of this 370. So, but after 1 year, if you look at it, people are not as much angry over 370 as we expected. As the Mahbooba or other people said that there will be a bloodshed if the Article 370 is touched. No such, nothing of the sort has happened. Thanks to the preventive measures taken by the government and the good action taken by the security forces, army, police, local police also. We were happy that no blood was shed on the roads of the Kashmir Valley. But still, while the two regions were happy, the third region, Kashmir, is still not. I would say they are just sullen. If not, they are critical. They are not coming forward openly, but still they have a misgiving about taking away of this so-called special rights of the constitutional rights. But if you take what are the biggest gain? The biggest gain of Article 3, going off that controversial provision of Article 370 was that emotionally we were already integrated. Jammu Kashmir, it is wrong to say that we were integrated now after so-called abrogation of Article 370. Jammu Kashmir was already integrated with the Union of India, but today we were more emotionally integrated. Earlier, our leadership was used to tell that we are a separate nation, we have a separate symbol, we have a separate flag, we have separate even the official seal. So those things which come in the way of our emotional integration had gone, and this is the biggest gain or implication of going away of the Article 370. The second good thing happened to is that those classes of people who were living here for last 70 years, for example, West Pakistani refugees who were allowed to stay here, who were given the government land to stay and cultivate, they were deprived of the rights of the permanent citizens, permanent resident of the state. They had the right of a citizen of India. They could participate in the Lok Sabha elections, but not the rights of a permanent resident, which we all had. Like, for example, they could not get admission in this government schools, government institutes, colleges. They could not participate in the state elections, municipal elections, civic elections. So they can't buy any property. So those things were there. And similar about the category of our Dalit. So what we call is the Safai Karamchari, who were brought by one of our health officers in the municipal corporation way back about in late 50s from Amritsar. So they are residing here without any citizen, without any right for the permanent residence. So they also got benefited. Third category were the Gorkhas. So they were a small number, but they too were benefited. So they became they could also exercise the right of a resident of Jammu and Kashmir. They were exercising the rights of a citizen of India, but not as a resident of Jammu and Kashmir, because we had something special status and special facilities given to the permanent resident of the state. So next thing is that a good thing happened is that for the first time after 73 years of accession, that the state, the UT government and the government of India recognized the accession day. This was one of my demands after I relinquished the government service, my post in the Public Service Commission. I have been consistently persuading the government to officially celebrate the accession day. 26th October must be celebrated as a official day, but they were shying away from this fact, and ultimately good thing happened that now we have a holiday, gazetted holiday on 26th August. Another good thing happening is that there were 1931 the people who had attacked the jail, central jail, in a case of where the court was held in 1931. So those persons who were killed in the police fighting were called the martyrs, and we had been getting the Martyrs' Day, and that Martyrs' Day holiday has also been withdrawn, because Jammu and Ladakh, they don't consider them the martyrs. They were the lawbreakers. So it is a recognition of the fact that they are not considered the martyrs, and that's why the government of UT have this year withdrawn the holiday. Another good thing is happening is that Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah, who has contributed a lot, I think, in bringing the Jammu and Kashmir to Union of India because of his close association with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. His birthday was also being celebrated, and he's being celebrated as the official day, and a holiday was also granted to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. This holiday has also been withdrawn because there has been a growing demand in Jammu, particularly Jammu, that the government must give a holiday on the birthday of Maharaja Hari Singh, who was instrumental, who has signed the instrument of accession, and he was the main architect of bringing Jammu and Kashmir in the Union of India. So this contradiction has been removed. I think this is one of the best things happening to us. Friends, if you want to see what is the implication, there have been many initiatives have been taken by the government. One of the segment which everybody is looking for in this seminar also is the security and militancy front. I think with the Dr. Ashok Ban and General Mehta is going to speak, and they are the best men to dwell on this subject. But I will just briefly touch this subject by saying that there is still a lot of efforts have been done, but still local people are still joining the ranks of militancy. That is not a good thing. I think we should be happy only when the local youth is not joining the ranks of militants. And the second thing is that we have not been able to radicalize the youth of Kashmir to that extent that they don't join the militancy and they join the mainstream. There, the government of India needs to have a major focus. I think more effort needs to be done. The remaining thing is that if can be different segment, can be the revival of the democratic institutions. Before the abrogation of Article 370, the assembly was dissolved, and the state was under president rule. Now, delimitation commission has been set up, and that is they are on the job. And unless the delimitation commission gives the report, the assembly election for the UT cannot be held. So what the government have done is that they have revived the grassroots democracy. I would call it grassroots democracy, at the panchayat level, and then block level, and now we are having the district level council elections, in which the mainstream parties of Kashmir, though they are against the abrogation of Article 370, and they are not, they have once said that we will not join any election process, are now participating in this process. And this is, I think, the good thing happening to us in 1 year. Then this is also extension of Article 73, 74 and 73rd and 74 constitutional amendment, which the previous government was blocking all through. There has been a lot of demand and a lot of us in the Panchayati Raj system. So those have been now extended, and we will have the fruit of that democratic process. As I said, all the constitutional provisions of Constitution of India have been extended to Jammu and Kashmir, and with this, along with this, they have extended about 525 central laws, which were the earlier state government, political government were blocking those laws to be extended to Jammu and Kashmir because their consent was required. They had withheld the consent. My only grouse was that even earlier that a law passed by the parliament, in which the members of the parliament, members from the state Jammu and Kashmir state, participate and take part in the voting, are good for 130 crore Indians, including about 22 crore Muslims. How can it be not good for merely 1 crore and 25 lakh young people of Jammu and Kashmir? It was just absurd. The argument was absurd that we want to have a separate nation because they wanted no central law, nothing of this India should come here. And actually, whatever they would make, the political leadership, it was cut and paste. We'll copy the central law and change the name and pass it in the assembly and the council, legislature, and we'll make it our state law. So it is a good thing that they have been happening to us. People are now getting benefited from the progressive laws which are already available to the citizen of India elsewhere. Along with this, they have repealed about 180 state laws and effective amendments in 138 state laws, which have been adopted by in the Reorganization Act, that they will continue to be enforced in Jammu and Kashmir. Secondly, then another thing happening is that we have now scrapped the state subject, the provision of state subject, and now introduction of domicile law is there. And now the land laws, the recent land laws have come, and now it is the state is the duty is as much available to any citizen of India as any other state to us. Even it was also a fallacy that people of Jammu and Kashmir can buy land, can live, can buy property anywhere in the country, but our co-citizen and elsewhere in the states cannot buy land in Jammu and Kashmir. So this contradiction has been removed, and I think nationally it is good, though people of Jammu and Kashmir are reading too much of in it and say that our land will be taken away. They do not understand that the land and the property they own cannot be taken away by the state. If they wish to sell it, only then it can be sold. So there is no question of grabbing their land. So the land remains with them. They are the owner. They have the ownership right. So they should have no fear on that. But state government needs to explain to them. There is some misgiving on the domicile laws also, but that also the state government, the UT government needs to be give focus on that. Then the remaining part is the governance. Now these are fallout of the fallout of the abrogation of Article 370, which I have mentioned. Now there is a part of the governance which the UT government, under the direction of the central government, have taken. One is that inclusive growth and development. So they have made some categories of people who have not been getting the reservations, for the reservation quota for recruitment. They have been included, particularly Pahari, and those people who are living adjoining to the international border. They have also been included in the reservations. And they have called for the outreach back to village. It's a noble initiative taken by the UT government, where they have gone to the villages, and officers have to stay there for a day or two, assess their problems, and identify the project to be taken up by the government. So 20,000 such projects have been identified, and that funds have been now being made available to the panchayats to start work on that.